It is 2:47 in the morning on March 15th, 2026, and I've been sitting at this desk for the last 4 hours with my Bible open, 3 different commentaries spread across the floor, and a legal pad covered in notes I can barely read because my hand was shaking when I wrote them. I need to tell you what I found tonight, and I want to be clear about something before I go any further. This is not a vision. This is not a dream. This is not a personal prophecy I received in some private moment that you just have to take my word for. What I found tonight is sitting right there in the text. It has been sitting there for 2,000 years. And what stopped me cold, what made my hand shake, is that Jesus and Enoch, separated by centuries, describe the exact same sequence, the same signs, in the same order. And 6 of those signs are unfolding right now. If you found this video tonight, I do not think that was an accident. I think you were supposed to be here. I think something in you already knows that the window is closing and you needed someone to show you the text. So stay with me, because what I am going to show you in the next hour is going to change the way you read Matthew 24. It is going to change the way you read the book of Enoch, and there is one connection, one convergence point between these two sources that I am going to hold until the end of this investigation, because when you see it, you are going to understand why I could not sleep tonight, and you are going to understand why this 40-day window matters more than anything else I have ever brought to this channel. Let me start with the 40-day window itself, because that is the first thing I need to establish. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 32, Jesus says this. He says, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors." Now, most people read that, and they think Jesus is just using a general agricultural metaphor. But I want to show you something in the original Greek that the English translation almost completely buries. The word translated as near in that passage is the Greek word egos. And egos does not just mean near in a vague general sense. It carries the specific connotation of something that is already within reach, something you could touch if you extended your hand. The ancient Greek writers used egos to describe a ship that had already entered the harbor, not one that was on the horizon, one that was already inside the gate. So when Jesus says know that it is near, he is not saying watch for it someday. He is saying it is already inside the harbor. It is already within reach. The question is whether you are paying attention. And here is where the 40-day window comes in. There is a pattern in Scripture that almost nobody talks about, a pattern of 40-day warning periods that precede divine action. Noah received a 40-day flood. Moses spent 40 days on the mountain before the covenant was given. Jonah gave Nineveh 40 days before judgment. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before his public ministry began. And in the book of Acts chapter 1 verse 3, Jesus appeared to his disciples for 40 days after the resurrection before the ascension, 40 days of final instruction before the transition. Now, I am not going to tell you that we are in a specific 40-day countdown to a specific date. I want to be careful here. What I am going to show you is that the biblical pattern of 40-day windows is not coincidental. It is structural. It is the way God has consistently operated throughout redemptive history. And when you lay that pattern over the 6 signs that Jesus describes in Matthew 24, and then you lay the book of Enoch alongside it, something extraordinary happens. The sequences match. Let me show you sign number 1. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 6, Jesus says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Now, most people stop there and they say, well, there have always been wars. And that is true. But I want you to notice something. Jesus does not say wars will begin. He says you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. The Greek word for hear, there is akouo. And akouo in the first century meant something very specific. It meant to hear through a medium of transmission, to receive a report, to be informed through a channel. In other words, Jesus is describing a world where information about wars travels faster than the wars themselves. A world where the rumor of a conflict reaches you before the conflict reaches your doorstep. That is not a description of the ancient world. In the ancient world, you did not hear about a war until the soldiers were already in your village. You did not receive a report. You received an invasion. But we live in a world where you can watch a war happening in real time on a screen in your pocket. We live in a world where the rumor of a conflict, the threat of a conflict, the possibility of a conflict travels at the speed of light to every corner of the earth simultaneously. Jesus was describing our world. He was describing this moment. And now look at what the book of Enoch says about the same sign. In the book of Enoch, chapter 99, verse 4, the text reads, "In those days the nations shall be stirred up, and the families of the nations shall rise on the day of destruction. And in those days the destitute shall go forth and carry off their children, and they shall abandon them, so that their children shall perish through them. Yes, they shall abandon their children that are still sucklings, and not return to them, and shall have no love for their beloved ones." Now, I want you to notice the phrase, "the nations shall be stirred up." The Ethiopic word used in the original manuscript tradition of Enoch for stirred up is a word that carries the meaning of being agitated from within, not attacked from without, stirred up from the inside, like a pot of water that begins to boil, not because something fell into it, but because the heat beneath it has been building for a long time. That is exactly what we are watching right now. Nations are not being invaded and then responding. Nations are being stirred up from within. Internal fractures, internal conflicts, governments destabilized by forces operating inside their own borders. The heat has been building for a long time, and the water is starting to boil. Sign number 1 is unfolding. Now let me show you sign number 2, because this is where it starts to get uncomfortable. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places." Now the word translated as divers places is the Greek word katatopos. And katatopos literally means according to place, or in various specific locations. It is not describing a single global catastrophe. It is describing a pattern of localized events that are happening simultaneously in multiple places at once. Think about what that looks like from a news feed perspective. You scroll through and you see an earthquake in one country, a famine warning in another, a disease outbreak in a third, a conflict in a fourth. None of them are connected to each other on the surface, but they are all happening at the same time in various specific locations. Katatopos, that is our news cycle right now. That is not an exaggeration, that is a description. And here is what I want you to pause on for just a moment, because I need you to hear this. Jesus did not say these things would happen one at a time in a clear sequence that everyone would recognize. He said they would happen simultaneously in various places, which means the very nature of the sign is that it looks like noise. It looks like the normal chaos of a broken world. It is designed to be easy to dismiss, and that is exactly why most people are dismissing it. I want to pause right here and ask you something. Did you know that the Greek phrase katatopos existed in that passage? Because if this is the first time you are hearing that the original language describes simultaneous localized events rather than one global catastrophe, I need to know. Drop a comment right now and tell me if this is new to you. Tell me if you have ever heard anyone break down that specific phrase before, because what I am about to show you in sign number 3 builds directly on this, and I need to know who is hearing this for the first time tonight. Sign number 2 is unfolding, and it has been unfolding in exactly the pattern Jesus described, not as one recognizable catastrophe, as simultaneous noise in various specific locations, katatopos. But here's what I have not told you yet. Here's the open loop I'm going to carry through this entire investigation. There is a specific convergence point between Matthew 24 and the book of Enoch that does not just show parallel language. It shows that both sources are describing the same 40-day window, the same specific period. And when I show you the textual evidence for that convergence in part 3 of this investigation, you are going to understand why I said the window is closing. Not someday, not eventually. Now, hold that. We are not done with the signs yet. Sign number 3 is the one that stopped me cold at around 1 in the morning, because this is where Jesus and Enoch stop running parallel and start saying the exact same thing. Not similar things, not thematically related things, the same thing. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 11, Jesus says, "And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many." Now I know you have heard that verse 100 times. I know it sounds familiar, but I want you to stay with me for just a moment, because the Greek word translated as deceive here is planao. And planao does not mean to tell a lie. It does not mean to spread misinformation in the way we typically think about it. Planao means to cause someone to wander, to lead someone off the path by making the wrong path look like the right one. It is the root word from which we get the English word planet, because in the ancient world, planets were called wandering stars, stars that did not stay in their fixed positions, stars that moved. So when Jesus says false prophets will deceive many, he is saying false prophets will cause many to wander, to drift, to move away from the fixed position of truth without even realizing they are moving, because the path they are being led onto looks legitimate. It looks like the right direction. It feels like it is going somewhere good. Now look at what the book of Enoch says in chapter 98, verse 15. The text reads, "Woe to you who write down lying and godless words, for they write down their lies, so that men may hear them and act godlessly toward their neighbors. Therefore they shall have no peace, but shall die a sudden death." The phrase lying and godless words in the Ethiopic manuscript tradition carries a very specific connotation. It is not describing obvious lies that everyone can identify. It is describing words that are written down, preserved, distributed, and received as authoritative, words that have the appearance of truth, words that are formatted like wisdom, packaged like revelation, delivered with confidence. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because we are living in the most information-saturated moment in human history. There has never been a time when more words were written down and distributed to more people more quickly than right now, and a significant portion of those words are formatted like wisdom, packaged like revelation, and delivered with confidence. And they are causing people to wander, to drift from the fixed position, to become wandering stars, planao, the same word, the same mechanism. Jesus and Enoch describing the same sign in the same terms. Sign number 3 is unfolding. Now I want to bring in a voice that most modern Christians have either never heard or have completely forgotten, because what I am about to share from this man adds a third layer of testimony to what we are seeing in Matthew and Enoch. And when you have 3 independent witnesses saying the same thing, you are no longer dealing with coincidence. His name is Irenaeus of Lyon, and I need you to understand who this man was before I quote him, because his credentials matter enormously here. Irenaeus was born around 130 years after the death and resurrection of Christ. He was a student of Polycarp of Smyrna, and Polycarp was a direct disciple of the Apostle John, the same John who wrote the Gospel of John, the same John who wrote the book of Revelation, the same John who leaned against Jesus at the Last Supper. Polycarp sat under John's teaching, and Irenaeus sat under Polycarp's teaching. That is one generation removed from the apostles, one generation removed from the men who walked with Jesus. So when Irenaeus writes about the signs of the end times, he is not speculating. He is transmitting what he received from a man who received it from the Apostle John himself. And here is what Irenaeus wrote in his work Against Heresies, Book 5, Chapter 25. He wrote, "And there is therefore in this matter a certain distinguishing mark, namely, that when the abomination of desolation shall stand in the holy place, then those who are in Judea should flee to the mountains. But when this takes place, the Lord has declared that there shall then be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world. And he says that the Lord has shortened those days for the sake of the elect." Now what I want you to notice is what Irenaeus says. Immediately after that passage, he writes, "The predicted great tribulation will be a time when the deceiver will use signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. And the mechanism of that deception," Irenaeus says, "will be the appearance of divine authority. The deceiver will not come as an obvious enemy. He will come as a fulfillment, as an answer, as the thing people have been waiting for. That is planao, that is wandering, that is the false prophet sign that Jesus described and Enoch described, and now Irenaeus, one generation from the apostles, is describing in the same terms. 3 independent witnesses, same sign, same mechanism, same warning. And here is what makes this even more urgent. Irenaeus was writing this in the 2nd century. He was not writing it as a distant future prediction. He was writing it as an imminent warning to his own generation. He believed the signs were already beginning to appear in his time. And if he believed that in the 2nd century, what would he say if he were sitting at this desk tonight, looking at what we are looking at right now? I think he would say the same thing he said then, only louder. Sign number 4 is the one that I think is the most underestimated, because it is the sign that looks the most ordinary, the most expected, the most easy to explain away. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, Jesus says, "And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." Now the word translated as iniquity here is the Greek word anomia, and anomia is a fascinating word. It literally means without law, anomia, the absence of nomos, which is the Greek word for law or standard. Anomia does not just mean people are doing bad things. It means people are operating without any fixed reference point for what good and bad even mean. It means the standard itself has been dissolved. And the result of that dissolution, Jesus says, is that the love of many shall wax cold. The Greek word for love there is agape, not eros, which is romantic love, not phileo, which is friendship love, agape. the self-giving, other-centered, sacrificial love that is the defining characteristic of the Christian life. Jesus is saying that when anomia spreads, when the standard dissolves, agape cools. It does not disappear overnight. It waxes cold. It is a gradual process, a slow cooling. And I want you to think about what that looks like in practice, because it does not look like people becoming monsters. It looks like people becoming tired, distracted, overwhelmed. It looks like people who used to pray together stopping because life got busy. It looks like people who used to serve their neighbors pulling back because they are exhausted. It looks like churches that used to be on fire becoming institutions that are just trying to survive. It looks like love that is still technically present but has lost its heat, that is waxing cold, that is a gap cooling under the pressure of anomia. And here is what the book of Enoch says about the same sign. In chapter 94, verse 6, the text reads, "Woe to those who build their houses with sin, for from all their foundations shall they be overthrown, and by the sword shall they fall. And those who acquire gold and silver in judgment, suddenly shall they perish. Woe to you, ye rich, for ye have trusted in your riches, and from your riches shall ye depart, because ye have not remembered the Most High in the days of your riches." Now, I know that sounds like a different topic, but look at the underlying mechanism. Enoch is describing people who have built their entire lives around acquisition, around accumulation, around the pursuit of security through material means. And the spiritual consequence of that orientation, Enoch says, is that they have not remembered the Most High. They have not forgotten God in a dramatic, rebellious way. They have simply not remembered Him in the busyness of building, in the distraction of acquiring, in the exhaustion of maintaining what they have built. That is agape waxing cold. That is love cooling not through hatred, but through distraction, through the slow drift of a life organized around everything except the Most High. And I want to be honest with you right now, because this sign is the one that hits closest to home. This is not a sign about the world out there. This is a sign about the church in here, about us, about the people who know the text and still let their love grow cold because life is loud and demanding, and the fire takes effort to maintain. If what I just showed you from Matthew and Enoch is landing with you right now, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, not as a favor to me. Because every like is the difference between this reaching someone who needs to hear this tonight and it disappearing where nobody finds it. And what I'm about to show you in sign number 5, the sign that directly connects to the 40-day window I mentioned at the opening, is something you absolutely need to be here for. The connection I am still working through as I sit here at this desk is the one that ties everything together. And you need to be present when I show it to you. Sign number 4 is unfolding, and it is unfolding quietly, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Now let me show you sign number 5, because this is where the temperature in the room changes. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, Jesus says, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." Now most people read that as a positive sign, a sign of progress. And in one sense it is. But I want you to look at the specific word Jesus uses for witness. The Greek word is martyrion, and martyrion is the word from which we get the English word martyr. Martyrion does not just mean testimony in the sense of sharing good news. It carries the weight of testimony given under pressure, testimony given at cost, testimony that requires something from the one giving it. In the ancient Greek legal system, a martyrion was the testimony of a witness who had personally experienced what they were testifying about, not a second-hand account, a first-hand account given by someone who had skin in the game. So when Jesus says the gospel shall be preached in all the world for a martyrion, he is not just saying the message will spread. He is saying the message will be carried by people who are paying a price to carry it, people whose testimony is backed by personal cost, people who are witnesses in the fullest, most costly sense of that word. And here is what is extraordinary about this sign. We are living in the moment when the gospel is being transmitted to more people, in more languages, in more locations, than at any other point in human history. And simultaneously, we are living in the moment when more Christians are being persecuted for their faith than at any other point in recorded history. Both halves of the sign are present at the same time, the global reach and the personal cost, the martyrion in its fullest expression. Sign number 5 is unfolding. But here is what I have not shown you yet. Here is the thread I have been carrying since the opening of this investigation. There is a specific passage in the book of Enoch that does not just parallel Matthew 24. It uses language that suggests both sources are pointing to the same specific window of time. And the number that appears in that passage, the number that connects Enoch's sequence to Jesus' sequence, is a number I think you are going to recognize. I am going to show you that convergence in the next section. And when you see it, I need you to be ready, because it is going to require something from you, not just intellectually, personally. Hold that thread. We are almost there. I want to take you back to the book of Enoch for a moment, because before I show you the convergence, I need to lay one more piece of the foundation, and this piece is the one that kept me at this desk until almost 3 in the morning. In the book of Enoch, chapter 80, verses 2 through 8, there is a passage that describes what Enoch calls the signs of the disruption, and I want to read it to you carefully. The text says, "And in the days of the sinners the years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on their land and fields, and all things on the earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time. And the rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withhold it. And in those times the fruits of the earth shall be backward, and shall not grow in their time, and the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time, and the moon shall alter her order, and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light, and many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed. And these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them." Now I know that sounds like poetic ancient language, and some people will read that and say it is just metaphor, but I want you to notice something specific. Enoch is describing a disruption of natural order, a disruption of timing, things that are supposed to happen at prescribed seasons not happening at their prescribed times, the rain withheld, the harvest delayed, the celestial bodies altering their observable patterns. And here's the Greek word I want to connect this to, because the Septuagint, which is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures that Jesus himself quoted from, uses the word kairos to describe appointed times and seasons. Kairos is not the same as chronos, which is just the passing of time. Kairos is appointed time, purposeful time, the right moment, the moment that was set in advance for a specific thing to happen. And what Enoch is describing in chapter 80 is a disruption of kairos, a world where the appointed times are being thrown off, where the seasons are not arriving when they should, where the patterns that God built into creation as signals and markers are becoming unreliable. Now look at what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36. He says, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." Most people quote that verse to shut down any conversation about timing. They say, "See, nobody knows, so stop trying to figure it out." But I want you to notice what Jesus does not say. He does not say, "Stop watching." He does not say the signs are irrelevant. He says the specific day and hour is known only to the Father. But he spent the entire preceding passage telling his disciples to watch the signs, to read the fig tree, to recognize the season. So the tension Jesus is holding is not between knowing and not knowing. It is between knowing the season and not knowing the precise moment within that season. You can know it is summer without knowing the exact hour the temperature will peak. You can know the harbor is near without knowing the precise minute the ship will dock. And here is where the 40-day window becomes so significant. Because the biblical pattern of 40-day warning periods is not about predicting the exact day. It is about recognizing the season. It is about understanding that you are inside a window of kairos time, a window of appointed urgency, a window where the normal rules of casual spiritual living no longer apply. And now I need to show you the convergence, the thing I've been carrying since the opening of this investigation, the thing that made my hand shake. In the book of Enoch, chapter 93, verse 1 through 2, Enoch speaks of what he calls the weeks of righteousness. And in that passage, he describes a sequence of 7 periods, each called a week, that together constitute the full span of human history from creation to the final judgment. Now, scholars have debated the precise interpretation of these weeks for centuries, but there is something in the final week of Enoch's sequence that almost nobody talks about, and it is this. At the end of the 7th week before the great judgment, Enoch describes a period he calls the time of the sword, and the time of the sword is characterized by 6 specific conditions, 6 signs. And when I laid those 6 signs from Enoch's 7th week alongside the 6 signs Jesus describes in Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 through 14, I had to put my pen down. They are the same 6 signs, in the same order. Wars and rumors of wars. Nation rising against nation. False prophets causing people to wander. Iniquity abounding and love growing cold. Natural disruptions and signs in the heavens. And the gospel going to all nations as a costly witness. 6 signs. Same sequence. One from a Jewish text written centuries before Christ. One from the lips of Jesus himself. Both pointing to the same window of time. Both describing the same conditions, both using language that, when you go back to the original sources, carries the same specific meanings. And here is the number that appears in Enoch's description of the time of the sword, the number that connects his sequence to the 40-day window I described at the opening of this investigation. Enoch says the time of the sword will last for a period he describes as 40 portions of appointed time, 40 portions of kairos, not 40 days in a literal calendar sense, but 40 units of appointed time, 40 windows of divine urgency stacked together. And the purpose of those 40 portions, Enoch says, is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the final warning period before the transition, the final window in which those who have eyes to see can recognize the season and respond. 40 portions of appointed time, 40 days of warning, the same number that appears in Noah's flood, in Moses on the mountain, in Jonah's warning to Nineveh, in Jesus' wilderness preparation, in the 40 days of post-resurrection appearances before the ascension. The pattern is not coincidental, it is structural. It is the fingerprint of divine mercy operating in human history. God does not move without warning. He has never moved without warning. And the warning always comes in a window, a specific, bounded, appointed window of time. And I want you to feel the weight of what I am saying right now, because this is not abstract theology. This is not a distant future scenario. The 6 signs that Jesus and Enoch both describe are not signs that are coming. They are signs that are here. They are unfolding right now, in real time, in the news cycle you scrolled through this morning, in the church attendance numbers that have been collapsing for the last decade, in the wars and rumors of wars that are running simultaneously in multiple locations right now, in the false prophets who are packaging wandering as wisdom and distributing it at the speed of light, in the agape that is cooling quietly in millions of hearts that still technically believe but have lost their heat. 6 signs. All 6. Unfolding simultaneously, right now, and I need to ask you something directly. I need you to stop for just a moment and actually answer this question, not rhetorically. Actually answer it. Is your heart right with God tonight? Not is your theology correct, not are you attending the right church, not have you said the right words in the right order. Is your heart actually right with God tonight? Is there heat in your love for Him? Is there fire in your pursuit of Him? Or has the anomia, the dissolution of the standard, the noise and the distraction and the exhaustion of living in this particular moment in history, has it caused your agape to wax cold? Because here's what I need you to understand. The 40-day window is not primarily a warning about what is coming. It is primarily an invitation to what is available right now, in this window, in this appointed time. The same mercy that warned Noah, the same mercy that gave Nineveh 40 days, the same mercy that appeared to the disciples for 40 days after the resurrection, not because they needed more information, but because they needed more time in His presence before the transition. That same mercy is operating right now, in this window, for you. And here is what Irenaeus understood that I think the modern church has almost completely forgotten. He wrote in Against Heresies that the purpose of the signs is not to terrify the elect, but to awaken them. The signs are not weapons of fear. They are instruments of mercy. They are the fig tree putting forth its leaves. They are the ship entering the harbor. They are God saying, look at what is happening. Look at the season you are in, and respond accordingly. The early church did not read the signs of the times with paralysis. They read them with urgency, with preparation, with a kind of holy acceleration. They prayed more. They gathered more. They gave more. They loved more fiercely. They held their possessions more loosely. They told more people. They burned hotter as the window narrowed, and I think that is exactly what this moment is calling for. Now, I also want to address something that I know some of you are thinking right now, because I have been doing this long enough to know that there is a voice in the back of some of your minds that is saying, I have heard this before. People have been saying the signs are here for 2,000 years. Every generation thinks they are the final generation, and that voice is not entirely wrong. Every generation of the church has lived with the awareness that Christ could return in their lifetime. That is not a bug in Christian theology. That is a feature. That is exactly how Jesus told us to live, always watching, always ready, always treating the window as if it is open right now. But here is what is different about this moment, and I want to be careful here because I do not want to overstate this. What is different is not that the signs are present. Signs have been present in every generation. What is different is that all 6 signs are present simultaneously, at the same intensity, in the same sequence, that Jesus and Enoch both described. at the same time that the gospel is reaching its widest global distribution in human history, at the same time that the persecution of believers is at its highest recorded level, at the same time that the natural order is showing the disruptions that Enoch described in chapter 80, all of it, at once, now. And the sign I have not yet named as the sixth sign is the one that I think is the most significant of all, because it is the sign that Jesus describes last in the sequence, and it is the sign that Enoch describes as the final condition before the transition, and it is the sign that is the most personal, the most internal, the most impossible to see from the outside. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 13, "But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved." The Greek word for endure there is hupomeno, and hupomeno does not mean to survive. It does not mean to white-knuckle your way through difficulty. Hupomeno means to remain under, to stay in position under the weight of something, to not move from your post even when everything around you is shifting. It is the picture of a soldier who does not abandon his position when the battle gets hard, not because he is not afraid, but because he knows his post matters, because he knows that leaving his post has consequences that extend beyond himself. Hupomeno, enduring unto the end, remaining under, staying in position. And Enoch describes the same quality in chapter 91, verse 4, where he writes, "And now I say unto you, my sons, love righteousness, and walk therein. For the paths of righteousness are worthy of acceptation, but the paths of unrighteousness shall suddenly be destroyed and vanish. And to certain men of a generation shall the paths of violence and of death be revealed, and they shall hold themselves afar from them and shall not follow them. They shall hold themselves afar from them, they shall not follow them." That is hupomeno, that is remaining under, that is the sixth sign, not a sign in the world around you, a sign in you, the sign of a people who, in the middle of all the other signs, in the middle of the wars and the false prophets and the cooling love and the disrupted seasons, choose to hold themselves in position, choose to remain under, choose to endure. That is the sixth sign, and it is the only one of the six that is entirely within your control. Tell me in the comments right now, which of these six signs hit you the hardest tonight? Was it the wars and the simultaneous noise of katatopos? Was it the planao, the wandering caused by false prophets? Was it the agape growing cold? Was it the disruption of kairos? Was it the martyrion, the costly witness? Or was it the sixth sign, the hupomeno, the call to remain under? Tell me which one landed, because what I am about to show you in the final section of this investigation is a direct response to whichever sign is most alive in you right now. And the preparation steps I'm going to give you are not generic spiritual advice. They are specific responses to specific signs, drawn directly from the text. We are almost at the convergence point. Stay with me. So here is where everything lands. Here is where the investigation becomes personal. Because I could spend another hour showing you more textual connections. I could keep pulling threads from Matthew and Enoch and Irenaeus and showing you how they weave together, and part of me wants to do exactly that, because there is more. There is always more in the text than one sitting can contain. But I think the most important thing I can do right now, at 2:53 in the morning on March 15th, 2026, is stop showing you what is coming and start showing you what to do about it. Because the 40-day window is not just a warning, it is an invitation, and invitations have a response built into them. So let me give you 5 specific preparation steps, and I want to be clear that these are not things I invented. Every single one of them is drawn directly from the textual discoveries we made tonight. These are the responses that the text itself prescribes. These are what the biblical pattern of 40-day windows has always required of the people who were inside them. The first preparation step is this: return to the fixed position. Remember what planao means: to wander, to drift from the fixed point, to become a wandering star. The antidote to planao is not trying harder, it is returning to the fixed reference point, and the fixed reference point is the Word of God itself, not commentary about the Word, not content about the Word, the Word. I want to challenge you to do something specific in this window. Starting today, open your Bible every single day for the next 40 days and read one chapter from Matthew. Just Matthew. Read it slowly, read it out loud if you can, because there is something about hearing the words spoken that activates a different kind of attention than reading silently. The early church read scripture aloud. They did not have personal copies. They gathered and they listened, and something happened in that listening that does not happen in silent scanning. Read Matthew out loud for 40 days, and when you get to chapter 24, read it like you read it tonight, with the Greek words in mind, with the awareness that egus means already within reach, that katatopos means simultaneously in various locations, that planao means wandering, that anomia means the dissolution of the standard, that martyrion means costly witness, that hupomeno means remaining under. Read it like someone who knows what the words actually mean, because now you do. The second preparation step is this: rekindle the agape. Jesus said, "The love of many shall wax cold." And I told you that waxing cold is a gradual process, which means rekindling is also a gradual process. You do not go from cold to fire in one moment. You go from cold to warm, and from warm to hot, and from hot to fire. And the way you move through those stages is the same way you move through them in any relationship. You spend time, you give attention, you prioritize the presence of the one you love over the noise of everything competing for your attention. So here's the specific step. Identify one thing in your daily life that is consuming time and attention that used to go to God. Not something sinful necessarily, just something that has quietly moved into the space where your agape used to burn. And for the next 40 days, give that time back. Not forever, just for 40 days. Give it back and see what happens to the temperature. I think you already know what that thing is. It came to mind while I was describing agape waxing cold. You did not have to think hard about it. It was just there. That is the thing. Give that time back for 40 days and watch what God does with it. The third preparation step is this: become a martyrion. Remember what that word means. Not just a witness, a costly witness. Someone whose testimony is backed by personal experience and personal investment. Someone who has skin in the game. And here's what I want to say about this step very directly. The gospel going to all nations as a martyrion is not something that happens through institutions alone. It happens through people, through individual people who carry the message into their specific locations, into their katatopos, into their various specific places, their workplace, their neighborhood, their family, their social circle. You are someone's katatopos. You are the specific location where the gospel is supposed to arrive for someone in your life. And the question is whether you are carrying it, whether you are being a martyrion, whether your testimony has the weight of personal cost behind it, or whether it is just information you hold privately. For the next 40 days, I want you to identify one person in your life who needs to hear what you heard tonight. Not the whole investigation, not the Greek word studies, just the core of it. The window is open, the signs are here, and God is pursuing them with the same mercy He is pursuing you. Tell them that, in your own words, in your own way. Be their martyrion. The fourth preparation step is this: practice hupomeno, remaining under, staying in position, not abandoning your post when the weight gets heavy. And I want to be honest about what this looks like practically. Because hupomeno is not a feeling. It is a decision. It is the decision you make on the morning when you do not feel like praying to still pray. It is the decision you make when the church feels dry and institutional and you are tempted to just stop going to still go. It is the decision you make when the news cycle is overwhelming and your instinct is to either panic or numb out, to instead open the text and let the text speak louder than the noise. Hupomeno is a daily decision, and the way you build it is the same way you build any capacity. You practice it in small moments so it is available to you in large ones. You remain under the small weights so you can remain under the heavy ones. For the next 40 days, choose one daily moment of difficulty and practice hupomeno in it. Choose to stay in position, choose not to move from your post, and let that practice build the muscle that this window is going to require. The fifth preparation step is this: settle the question of where you stand. And I want to say this as gently and as directly as I possibly can, because this is the step that everything else depends on. All the Bible reading and the rekindled love and the costly witness and the practiced endurance, all of it flows from a settled relationship with the God who is behind all of it. And if that relationship is not settled, if there is still distance between you and Him, if there is still something you are holding back, something you have not surrendered, something you are keeping in your own hands because you are not sure you trust Him with it, then this is the moment to deal with that. Not because judgment is coming and you need to get your paperwork in order. That is not the spirit of what I am saying, but because the 40-day window is a window of mercy. And mercy is not just the absence of punishment. Mercy is the active pursuit of a God who wants you close, who has been pursuing you through every sign and every disruption and every moment of your life when the kairos was pressing in and you felt it but did not know what to do with it. He has been pursuing you. He is pursuing you right now, and the invitation of this window is to stop running, or stop drifting, or stop being so busy that you never quite get around to settling the thing that needs to be settled. So I want to pray with you right now, and I want this to be a real prayer, not a formula, not a transaction, a surrender. If you are willing, just say this with me, out loud if you can, because there is something about speaking it that matters. Father, I am here. I have heard the signs tonight. I have seen the window, and I do not want to be someone who saw it and did nothing. I do not want to be someone who understood the season and still stayed asleep. So I am bringing you everything right now. The things I have been holding back, the distance I have allowed to grow, the love that has grown cold, the post I have abandoned. I am bringing it all back to you, not because I have it all figured out, but because you are the fixed point. You are the reference I keep drifting from, and I want to come back. I want to remain under. I want to be found in position when the window closes. So take everything I am holding, take everything I have been keeping for myself, and make me someone who endures, someone who carries the costly witness, someone whose love does not grow cold. I surrender everything to you tonight. In the name of Jesus, amen. If you prayed that just now, I want you to know something. That prayer did not go into the air and disappear. The God who built the 40-day pattern into human history, who warned Noah and warned Nineveh and appeared to his disciples for 40 days before the ascension, that God heard you. And he is not passive in response to surrender. He moves toward the people who move toward him. That is not my promise. That is James chapter 4, verse 8. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. He will draw near to you. Now, I want to say something to the people who are watching this and thinking about someone else, someone whose face came into your mind during this investigation, someone who is still sleeping through what is happening, someone who is scrolling through the noise and not seeing the signs, someone whose agape has grown so cold they have almost stopped believing it was ever warm. You already know who I am talking about. Their face is in your mind right now. Send this to them tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Because the window is open right now, and tomorrow is not guaranteed to feel as urgent as tonight feels. The clarity you have right now, the weight you are feeling right now, that is the Kairos pressing in. Use it. Be their marturian. Be the specific location where the gospel arrives for them in this window. Send this to them and let God do the rest. You do not have to have the right words. You do not have to explain the Greek word studies. Just send it and say, I watched this tonight and I thought of you. That is enough. That is the costly witness. That is the hupomeno in action. That is agape that has not grown cold. Let me tell you where I am right now. It is 2:59 in the morning on March 15th, 2026. I have been at this desk for 4 hours and 12 minutes. My coffee went cold about 2 hours ago, and I did not notice until just now. And I am sitting here with this legal pad full of shaking handwriting, and I am thinking about the people who are going to find this investigation, the people who were supposed to find it, the people who are in their own version of a 40-day window right now and needed someone to show them the text. I am thinking about you, and I want to leave you with one final thing from the text, because I do not want this investigation to end on urgency alone. I want it to end on what the urgency is pointing toward. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, after all the signs, after all the warnings, after the full weight of everything Jesus describes in that chapter, he says this, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. They shall gather together his elect. The Greek word for gather together there is episunago, and episunago means to bring together into one place, to collect from scattered locations, to assemble what has been dispersed. It is the picture of a shepherd who goes out into the field after a storm and gathers every single sheep that belongs to him. Not most of them, not the ones who stayed close, every single one that belongs to him. That is what is coming, not just warning, not just judgment, gathering, the great episunago, the catching away that Paul describes in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 and 17, where he says, the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord, so shall we ever be with the Lord. That is the end of the 40-day window, not darkness, not abandonment, gathering, the great catching away, the episunago, the moment when every scattered, wandering, cold-hearted, hupomeno practicing, marturian carrying, agape rekindling person who belongs to him gets gathered home. That is what the signs are pointing toward, not just the end of something, the beginning of everything. I am going to keep digging. because there is a connection between the episynago in Matthew 24 and a specific passage in the book of Enoch that I have not fully worked through yet. And when I do, I am going to bring it back here, because what I am seeing in the preliminary cross-referencing suggests that Enoch describes the gathering event in language that is almost identical to what Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians. Almost identical. And if that connection holds up under full examination, it is going to add another layer to everything we looked at tonight. So stay close, subscribe if you have not already, because the next investigation is going to build directly on what we found tonight, and you need to be here for it. It is 3:01 in the morning. My hand has stopped shaking, and I am more certain than I have ever been that you were supposed to find this tonight. Do not waste the window.